the focus of our program really is on the psychology behind work. So looking at things like how to motivate employees, employee well-being, leadership, building positive work relationships. We also cover things like talent management and coaching skills. And it's a post-experience master's, so all of the people on the program are working full-time, and they attend 1 day a week, either on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, depending on the year. And it's 5 hours of class, and then the rest of it is independent study. In terms of kind of the makeup of our student body, over the last 5 or 6 cohorts, the average level of work experience has been somewhere around 15 years. But then there's quite a wide range around that. So we would typically have maybe 3 or 4 people in a class who have sort of 4 or 5 years of work experience. And then in the last couple of cohorts, we've also had 1 or 2 people who are retired or approaching retirement and thinking about what to do for their second careers. There are 2 tracks within our program. So it's a master's in organisational psychology / behaviour. It's all one class, and everything is mixed. You get all of the same modules and things, but which track you join depends on your academic background when you start the program. So if you already have an undergraduate degree in psychology, then you join the Masters in Organisational Psychology, and if not, then the Masters in Organisational Behaviour. So I'm really delighted to be joined this afternoon by Kate McCormick. Kate is a senior consultant in organisational psychology with a company called Aperture Partners. And Kate completed her master's with us last year. So she has some fairly fresh reflections, I guess, on that experience. And she's be able to give us a little bit of information about what it's like. Kate, welcome, and maybe to kick us off, you can tell us what is a senior organisational psychology consultant, and how do you apply what you learned in the course in your...
Okay, well, at the moment in a small company, I think it's a bit of everything, but really, I suppose what it is I focus a lot on, I lead the people strategy arm of our company. So that's kind of all the psychometric assessments for search and selection, leadership development through assessment, succession planning, identification of high potential individuals, culture audits, engagement surveys. I think you actually helped me with one of them, Lisa. So really kind of, I would say all of it is based in assessment, and then it's kind of what comes from those baseline assessments. I obviously made the move. I was in the HSE in kind of a clinical capacity. So I made the move over into work psychology around the same time I started the master's. So it was a lot of new stuff going on.
And as you list some of the things that you do in your job, it sounds like reasonably close to the list of modules that you might have taken.
Yeah, oh, like absolutely. So I had obviously touched on, because obviously it was my job before I joined the master's. So I had started to kind of get into that type of stuff. But then it was almost as if the master's was kind of mirroring my job and vice versa. So with each new thing I learned, I was like, oh, I can bring this in, or I can bring that in, or I can add this kind of to my suite of tools, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I would say my job is very, very close to the master's in terms of all the modules. I'd say I take a little bit from each module nearly every day.
That's fantastic. I know a lot of people watching, Kate, might not be in a role where they could be called a organizational psychologist, or even kind of a people-facing sort of role. It might be useful just for people listening if you could reflect a little bit on the makeup of your class and even the team that you worked more closely with, just to give people an idea of the diversity of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of, my story of coming into this master's was, I was one of the younger crew that Lisa was kind of chatting about. So I had come before the year before and was interested in doing the master's, and we kind of together realized, I was a little bit too young, and I think experience is really important in some capacity. So whether it's kind of 2 years or whatever, but I just found a lot of it is discussion based, and it's kind of learning from each other, and you're chatting about scenarios in work and at work and people related things, and you just don't get that if you're coming straight from an undergrad. So our cohort was so diverse. Like we had, as you said, there were people kind of nearing retirement. One used to be an actor. We had people from the Garda. We had people from, you know, the likes of big financial services companies. We had kind of entrepreneurs, people who have since started their own kind of coaching businesses. We had people in logistics. We had teachers. We had people from Google. There was absolutely everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sometimes hard. I think, like, I get that question a lot from people, is like, am I the type of person who joins the program? And it's actually quite difficult to describe the type of person who joins the program, because we aim for so much diversity, because we think that adds to the kind of the learning environment and the community.
Yeah, and for me,
and
like,
the debate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would kind of say, you know, because I think when we all first came in and we're all sussing each other out on the first week, and we're kind of thinking, God, like, I'm very different to him or her, or God, her background is really impressive, or God, you know, why is he here, whatever. And everyone's trying to figure it out. But I think really the baseline thing that I found, especially in my small group, who you obviously get to know very, very well, like we're still all on WhatsApp to each other, the baseline thing that we all have in common is that we're interested in people, how people work, how people behave, and in most cases, how to make that better for people, how to make work better, how to improve, you know, the million hours that we spend in work. So I think if you're saying, you know, am I the type of person, if you tick those boxes and if that's what you're interested in, then you are that type of person for the course.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Kate. And given kind of the age profile and the level of experience of a lot of people on the program, another kind of common question that I get asked is, where do I fit this in my life? Lots of people have very demanding jobs, and 95% of our students are working full-time alongside the program. So maybe you could reflect a little bit on where you fit it alongside your demanding job, and how you found ways to manage the commitment.
Yeah, so I think that it's always great to look back with hindsight, because, you know, it's kind of rose tinted glasses and you're like, oh, you know, you make it work. It is very challenging. We all worked full time in my group, and a couple of us had kind of pretty demanding extracurricular things as well outside of work. And there were families, there were children, there were, you know, sports, there were different things. And I think it's kind of like anything. You have your good weeks and you have your bad weeks. You have your weeks when things are a little bit quieter and you have time and you're kind of thinking, okay, yeah, this is super manageable. And then you get your weeks where, you know, you have an assignment due, you're starting to plan your dissertation, someone's baby is sick, you know, someone's out of the office and you have to take their caseload on. And you do have those weeks when you're like, why in God's name am I doing this? But they're so rare compared to kind of when you're reminded, okay, no, this is why I'm doing it. So for me, I think it's just about, I just kind of looked at my weeks and looked at my months, and I kind of said, okay, where does this naturally fit? Like, where can I use this? So, you know, it does have to be evenings and weekends. It does have to be bank holidays. It does have to be a couple of days of your Christmas holidays at the beginning, or, you know, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I think it's just about, like, and it sounds, it's such a cliche, because, you know, it's true. You will find the time, like, you'll always find the time. And I found, to be honest, there were particular periods that were really demanding, like around, you know, if you had a couple of assignments that were kind of clustered. But I found you guys didn't tend to do that as much, because you're also aware that everyone's working full time. Everyone's in the same boat. You're all kind of, you have been in that corporate world yourselves. So it's less like that undergrad where every professor thinks that their work is the only work that has to be done. I found, like, it was very, you know, Fintan would kind of say, well, I know Melrona's given you this for next week, so why don't we push ours till the week after? So, you know, it's definitely, it's made work as best it can, but there are definitely crazy weeks.
Yeah. And often people ask me, like, how much of a commitment is it, or what kind of time do I need to try and set aside? And obviously you've got the 5 hours of classroom time.
Yeah.
But it's actually the other time, I think, that's a little bit harder to fit into your week, because classroom time becomes part of your routine, but it's the other hours. And everybody is a little bit different, I suppose, and particularly like the longer you've been out of formal education, sometimes the first semester, I think, can be a challenge for people, just in
bit of a shock to the system.
Getting used to like what it's like to write an assignment and read academic papers and things like that again. But I usually estimate somewhere around 15 hours independent study on top of the classes. Is that reflective of your experience?
Yeah, I would say kind of average maybe 10, 12. And then when things kind of heated up a little bit, kind of 15 to 18. But it very much, would go in waves. And I found actually my group, when we first came in, we all used the services that DCU offer in terms of like the academic writing and the different study skills kind of sessions and stuff. And that definitely helped to kind of map out processes, because as you said, you sit down to write your first assignment in however long. Now I'm lucky because I'm a nerd. I pretty much roll from masters to masters, but not everyone is the same. So I would say 15 is a good, but again, I think you grab hours, if I have a week that's particularly chill, I'll grab more hours and I'll kind of front load stuff. And then I might have a week when I'll just have to say to myself, college just is going to suffer this week because work is crazy and I have to do X, Y, Z. So I'd say 15 is a good bet, but I'd say it's kind of very goes in waves.
Yeah, and I think that's the reality of people's lives, isn't it? Like personal commitments and work commitments have their peaks and troughs, and college works in around that. But I guess something that we always try to do to try and facilitate that planning and moving things around to fit with everything else is giving people an oversight of here's all of the assignments for this semester, so that you can say, okay, well, I know that November is our crazy time because of this deadline or something, so I'm not getting anything done in November, so I need to front load stuff and make it start before then, and then I need to come back in December. So
I found that was one of the most helpful things. I've never been given kind of a, this is how the year is going to go. And you could put things into your diary. You could, if people said to you, when we could, do you want to do a weekend away in, May? You look at your assignments, you kind of say, yeah, I can do the end of May, but I can't do, because I have something on the 13th and something on the 19th or whatever. So I find that really, really helpful. And that was another example of, I found the masters working with people who work full time, because everything else, our diaries are populated in that way with everything else. So it makes sense that college kind of comes in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Kate, it's difficult, I guess, because of the diversity of the students, it's difficult to kind of talk about career paths following the masters, but maybe you can reflect a little bit on like career opportunities that it's opened up for some of the people that you worked with, or for you yourself, or.
Sorry, you just froze there. You're just asking me about
career opportunities. Sorry, maybe my internet connection might have.
No, it also could be mine, to be honest. Yeah, I think so. I know a couple of people have kind of pivoted from, certain I kind of have to be kind of careful, but certain roles into more kind of customer success roles or more people oriented roles. People have come from quite corporate jobs and gone into their own, kind of almost psychological stuff like coaching and leadership coaching and things like that. I know a couple of people who have moved internally, so say they might have been in HR in a certain company and they've gotten to move over into L&D, or something that they find more interesting, more kind of connected to the behavior and psychology piece. I've definitely, like, even within my own role, it's become, I used to do quite a lot of recruitment and that kind of people side of things. And since doing the masters now, I don't do any recruitment anymore, because that's not kind of where my interest lies. I do all of the people strategy stuff instead. So I think there's been massive, and I know there's other people in the class who went from kind of that recruitment type background into now, management consulting on the people side of things. So I think there's been huge, there's been loads of change towards the kind of people side of things.
Yeah, I think one of our brochures or something like that says 85% of people change either during or in the year after their program. But you'll know I teach research methods, so you'll know I'll question the difference between correlation and causality.
Yes.
People who go to master's programs are looking to build networks and to do new opportunities and things. And I know during the program, even one of your classmates started to work in the company of another one of your classmates.
Yeah.
So it opens up kind of opportunities in that way as well.
Absolutely. And people you would never meet, like I got to be in a group with, people who had kind of 15 years experience, who were leading HR teams. I got to be alongside people, in the Garda Síochána, who were super interesting, like people that I just wouldn't come across. And people we've stayed in touch with, like we're all still in touch. And I think, even with things like, if there's someone in the class who had a specific kind of speciality and I'm working on something, I'd send them an email kind of saying, what do you think of this? Or does it, like one of the ladies in my group has become really an expert in imposter syndrome and that whole side of things. And, I might bounce things off her for articles or different things. And so it's, and again, all people I wouldn't have met in my kind of day-to-day life.
Yeah. It's amazing to have that network. Like I did the program, as you know, in 2007. And at the time I had only ever worked in professional service firms. And I think like as well, obviously as the content of the program, but one of the most eye-opening things for me was just that not every work context is like the work context that I had been in, that trying to motivate people or lead people or look after employee well-being would look very different depending on what kind of an organization you were with. And I think that wasn't something that I had properly grasped before I got to hear the kind of debate and different perspectives from people in different backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd say to someone, you'd have an idea, and someone else in the class would say that absolutely wouldn't work where I am because, X, Y, Z. And you're like, oh my, because it's like that thing, a fish doesn't know it's in water, it's kind of like, you're like, what, there's other, and then you're like, oh my God, yeah, it never would have occurred to me. So absolutely.
Yeah. And what sort of advice, Kate, would you have for anybody who's thinking about doing the program or
I would say, from my point of view, I would say if you're thinking about it, 100% do it. I think I kind of, I had a lot of people saying to me, oh, maybe, do it later or do it. I think it's all the same. I think, the time you spend is the time you spend, and whether you do it now or you do it in a few years, I think go for it. But I think be realistic about your capacity. Like if you're absolutely up to your eyes and, you're having to choose between a shower and eating or whatever it may be, it's not going to work. But I think with the support of your colleagues in there, I find DCU itself incredibly supportive. If you're someone who tends to get, like I'm very conscientious, I tend to get quite stressed about things, I find it really, really kind of helpful in that way. So anyone who's kind of anxious about support or, feeling like they won't be able to do it or whatever, I'd say 100% it's probably the university I've been to that's been the most supportive in that area. So, I mean, I'm biased, but I would say go for it, but be aware of your capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good advice. Caroline, I think we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A there, so I might just take them as well. So somebody just wondering about the difference between the two streams. So if you don't have an undergrad in psychology and qualify for the OB stream, are you not eligible to take some psych specific modules? No. So internally, from our perspective, there is no difference between the OB stream and the psych stream. So Kate had an undergraduate degree in psychology when she joined us, but other people on her team didn't. They attended exactly the same modules. They worked on assignments together. There is no difference from our perspective in terms of what those two streams do or what they're involved in or what classes they take. The difference is essentially an accreditation difference, and it's about what you can call yourself afterwards. So our program is accredited by two professional bodies. The CIPD, which is the leading HR body, accredits both streams of the program. And then the Psychological Society of Ireland only accredits master's programs where the students have an undergraduate degree in psychology already. So they accredit the organisational psychology stream, and you can go on afterwards to work for a couple of years if you so wish with the Psychological Society of Ireland and become a chartered organisational psychologist. So there is no difference in terms of what you actually do in the programme. It's an accreditation issue, and one about the regulation of the term psychologist in the public sphere. It's not a DCU difference. Then if you later went on to do a psychology degree, could you use the title? So your award from DCU doesn't change regardless of what you do afterwards. So if you graduate with a master's in organisational behaviour, you always have a master's in organisational behaviour. It doesn't change. But so the regulation of the term psychologist is the responsibility of the Psychological Society of Ireland. At the moment, they're talking to a board called CORU, which looks at all health professions, and they're revising regulations around who can call themselves a psychologist and who can't. So I guess at the moment I don't have good oversight of what that's going to look like in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. But it's certainly not, we don't change the award that we give. So once you have graduated, then you have graduated with that award, and it doesn't change no matter what you do later.